Okay, so maybe you saw that Donald Trump's DC hotel had a new feature in its entryway. Someone had projected a series of poop emojis flying out of the entry on the front of it, and then it says, "This place is a shithole." Why did they do that? This was in response to reports that when Donald Trump sat down with a handful of lawmakers who were presenting to him a bipartisan deal about immigration and DACA and whatnot to try to solve this crisis before the government has to shut down, according to Dick Durbin, one of the people at that meeting, Donald Trump said, "Why do we need these people to come here from these shithole countries?" Referencing people thought it was Haiti, a few Central American countries, and the countries of Africa. It seemed like when they started to revise their statements, it was, no, when he said shithole, he just meant the African countries. So what do you guys, what's your response to this? Someone putting the shithole on the front of his house? Of his hotel?
Why? It's a shit house now.
I mean, how do you feel about this like artistic installation / statement piece?
It kind of shames people who are still spending money there, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, I think that's really what
seems like the purpose.
And it's harmless because don't you think? I mean, the people that were gonna stay there are gonna stay there anyway, and the people that weren't.
I think it's embarrassing though, even if you feel like, if someone is like, no, I love Trump, I'm absolutely gonna stay at the Trump hotel. This is the finest place. I love the steak. I don't know. And you're still walking in and you're gonna be like, ugh. So
yeah,
it's a totally harmless.
Here's the thing:
I think it's embarrassing.
Whenever I see an art installation that says like shit or like has nudity or in trying to push the envelope, you remember there was like some artist decided they were gonna do a bunch of photos of people naked on the street, laying down. There was that. When I first saw that, I was like, well, this is like introducing to kids who might be walking by, to people who might be walking by, like the word like nudity or like the word shit. But like the president's the one who said it.
Right. Yeah,
right?
And
so it's already out there.
His own word. So that's one thing. It's his own word. It's not like someone is projecting something onto him that he didn't say that is a disparaging comment. It's his own word. And I think that there's also a sentiment that, especially within news, you saw a lot of the newscasters being like, are we allowed to say shithole? I mean, the president's allowed to say it. Are we allowed to say it? And a lot of people feel like, so he's allowed to say this stuff and there are no consequences, whereas like NBC might have to take a strike because of Colin Jost saying it on Weekend Update or something like that. And I think that people want there to be some sort of a consequence, and this was a prank version of a consequence, which is like if you say shithole about certain countries and people are gonna respond in accordingly, and this was one of the ways that people did that. And yeah, it's a consequence, right?
So when you heard, I think it is. I don't think it's the worst thing to come out of this.
Absolutely not, but it's shameful. And I think that seems to me like the intent. I talked to the person who did it. But.
When you heard that he's called these places shithole countries, what was your response?
What was my response?
Yeah, what was everyone's response? I had a response.
Yeah, I mean, it was racist. It was offensive, but it wasn't surprising. This is not the first time. I think every time something like what was fascinating to me is every time this happened, I watched a ton of cable news that day. It was like election night for me. I was like, I was arguing with the TV. It was like, you know what I mean? But you'd have these news anchors, and most of them kind of came out and said this is racist, which was refreshing for me for when go back to that. But they all have these black people on there talking, these analysts, and they almost asked them. It seemed like this question, in effect, like, are you surprised? And the first thing most people said, I noticed, was this is not surprising.
No,
most educated people that this is not surprising.
I think what was surprising for me was the White House response to this coming out was that I thought that they would be like, it's fake news, it never happened, it wasn't said, and then, or
that is what happened, no?
It is, but I was just surprised that the White House did, because they've tried to like sort of color things in a more favorable light in the past. And they were just like, yeah, no, what he did say this.
No, they didn't say
No,
he did
they
say
said he
this.
did not
They
say
didn't
it.
deny that he said
yeah.
it. And
But
usually
then
they
the
just come out and
president denied that
go,
he
no,
said it.
there's no way. And then they waited to see what his response was, because let's face, like, if you listen to the old Nixon tapes, he has the foulest mouth in the world. So it's no surprise that behind the scenes there are lawmakers who have potty mouths. But in this specific situation, him characterizing them as shithole countries just reveals his entire worldview. In a way that isn't new, because he did say, like, Mexicans, they're not sending their best, they're sending us rapists, they're sending murderers. But then if you look at the actual numbers, he was like, looking at people from various countries in Africa, like African immigrants, according to one stat that I saw, have a higher likelihood to have a college education than Americans who live here. So he's just wrong. He's wrong about that. And it's just his entire view of the world is ancient and strange and frustrating. And then the nature of this meeting, he was going to hear the deal that had been made between, a Republican and a Democrat were coming in to be like, here's our deal. There's going to be, we're going to okay DACA, we're going to keep it going. We're going to change, you want this like merit-based program for visas or whatever. We're going to kind of get rid of the lottery and shift those to places like Haiti. And he's like, whoa, Haiti? Those people are black. And I'm from New York, and I jumped to like my racist idea of Haitians. It's so clear to me what's happening.
So clear, but it's been happening. And I think this was fascinating, almost like harmful to me, watching even people in defense of immigrants and black people and brown people. Sometimes we still, even in defending black people, I'm just gonna go with black people because I'm black. If you haven't noticed,
I'm gonna do Latin Americans because I took Spanish in high school.
Perfect, I think that works. And like there's this erasing of the black experience in America by it's like it's a microaggression, you don't even notice it. Like people stood up there saying in total defense of people and basic humanity, we're saying, this is the worst thing any president has ever said. This is the most racist thing any president has ever said. And I get where you're going with that, but some of our presidents own slaves. Yeah. I don't believe behind closed doors, at least the black people weren't spoken about like this in the history. Like, are we forgetting what black people in America have dealt with? Are we? Like, so it's like, I see what you're doing, but now I can't even cheer for you because now you've hurt my feelings again, and now it's like you're like constantly like erasing.
50% of the presidents on Mount Rushmore own slaves.
But and so it's like, I get where you're going, but it's like, and then also kind of this like toting out exceptional black immigrants, exceptional Haitians. Look at what this person's, look how well educated he was. Look at this, how dare you call these people, say they're from a shithole. You don't have to be, and I get where you're going with that, but you don't have to like show off the best blacks that you know in order to prove that all black people deserve like basic like human rights.
Right, my point about the African immigrants is he just is making these statements about immigration policy and he just doesn't, like he's contradicting himself in the whole thing. And then to say like people from Norway, we want people from Norway, it's like then you want socialists here and you're against that and everything else you say. It's just all the inconsistencies along the way.
Because it's not even about that. We know it's not about that. So we don't even need to break down those arguments because we know that it's not about that. And I think we have to just stick with what it really is about because we've gotten to this space where it is more offensive to be called racist than it is to actually be racist. Yeah. And then you get people who are like, well, don't name call. When you name call, people ignore you. These people have been ignoring me. And it's like sometimes you have to call it what it is. And we're like breaking down like a lot of times on these shows, not the show, but on watching the news, like breaking down if it's okay to call it racist. And I saw a lawmaker say like, I don't like that, but I'm not a name caller. I'm not gonna call it racist. And it's like, we are forgetting how harmful racism actually is, how dangerous, how violent it is and what it leads to. And it's seriously, you don't want to be, it's just, I don't know, it takes me back to, I went to the University of Oklahoma. It takes me back to those kids, I don't know if you remember the story, fraternity brothers on a bus singing a song, saying the N-word.
Remember that.
And they all came out and I'm not racist, I said something horrible, I did something bad, I'm not racist. No, you are racist because that's the actual definition of it. If you don't want to be racist, we can talk about that and maybe you can work towards that, but you are racist and it's gross to realize that, because it's gross what you're doing. And people get more focused on the label. The label is who you are, bro. Like, you know, sometimes